The coffin was already sealed when the scream pierced the night. "She's not dead." The words echoed through the fog-drenched cemetery, freezing every mourner in place. Pale faces turned toward the darkness beyond the iron gates, where a figure stood draped in shadow, a man whose eyes burned like embers in the mist. The priest's hands trembled on his Bible. The gravediggers dropped their shovels, and Eleanor's fiancé, Lord Richard Pemberton, reached instinctively for a weapon he didn't carry. But it was too late. The stranger was already moving. The autumn rain hammered against the windows of Ashford Manor like 1,000 desperate fingers seeking entry. Inside the grand estate, Eleanor Ashford stood before her bedroom mirror, her reflection a ghost in the candlelight. The white wedding gown hung on the carved oak wardrobe behind her, a beautiful prison she would wear in less than 2 days. "You should be sleeping, Miss Eleanor," came the gentle voice of Martha, her lady's maid, who had been with the family since Eleanor was a child. The older woman, nearly 60, with silver threading through her dark hair, entered carrying a tea tray. Eleanor didn't turn from the mirror. At 24, she possessed the kind of beauty that painters begged to capture. Raven black hair that cascaded in waves past her shoulders, porcelain skin that seemed to glow in lamplight, and eyes the color of a storm-gray sea. But tonight, those eyes held no light at all. "I can't marry him, Martha," Eleanor whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't." Martha set down the tray with a soft clink and moved to her young mistress's side. "Lord Pemberton is a respected man. Wealthy. Your father has made a good match." "My father has sold me," Eleanor corrected, her hands clenching into fists against her silk nightgown. "Richard is cruel. I've seen how he treats his servants, his horses. Last week at the garden party, I watched him strike a stable boy for moving too slowly. A child. Martha, he struck a child." The older woman's face tightened with sympathy, but she said nothing. They both knew the truth. Eleanor's father, Lord James Ashford, had gambled away most of the family fortune. The marriage to Richard Pemberton wasn't just arranged, it was a financial rescue. Without it, the Ashfords would lose everything. "Drink your tea, dear," Martha urged gently. "Perhaps things will seem brighter in the morning." Eleanor took the delicate china cup, feeling its warmth seep into her cold fingers. The liquid was darker than usual, with an unusual bitter undertone masked by honey. "This tastes strange. It's a new blend. Chamomile and valerian root. To help you sleep." Martha's voice was oddly flat. Eleanor drank it anyway. What did it matter? Sleep or wake, her fate was sealed. Within minutes, a peculiar heaviness began spreading through her limbs. The room tilted slightly, and Eleanor gripped the edge of her vanity. "Martha, I feel... Come, lie down." Martha's hands were on her shoulders, guiding her toward the bed with unexpected strength. "Something's wrong." Eleanor's tongue felt thick, her vision blurring at the edges. Through the growing haze, she saw Martha's face, and for just a moment, something flickered in the maid's expression. "Regret? Fear? I'm sorry," Martha whispered, barely audible. "I'm so sorry, child. But it's better this way, better than what he would do to you." Eleanor tried to speak, to ask what she meant, but darkness was rushing up to meet her. Her last conscious thought was of the figure she'd glimpsed in the garden 3 nights ago, a man standing in the rain, watching her window, a man whose eyes had seemed to glow in the darkness. Then nothing. "Eleanor, wake up." The screaming brought the entire household running. Lord James Ashford reached his daughter's bedroom first, his nightshirt hastily tucked into his trousers. What he found stopped his heart. Eleanor lay in her bed, perfectly still, her skin as white as the sheets beneath her. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint, and her hands folded across her chest were cold as marble. "No, no, no." James fell to his knees beside the bed, grabbing his daughter's hand. No pulse, no breath, no warmth. Martha stood in the corner, her face a mask of horror. "I found her like this, my lord. I brought her morning tea and she wouldn't wake." Dr. Henry Morrison arrived within the hour, summoned by a frantic footman. He was a severe man in his 50s, with sharp features and sharper eyes. He examined Eleanor thoroughly, checking her pulse at wrist and throat, holding a mirror to her lips to detect breath, lifting her eyelids to peer at unresponsive pupils. Finally he straightened, his face grave. "I'm deeply sorry, Lord Ashford. Your daughter has passed. Given the absence of any injury or sign of illness, I suspect a sudden failure of the heart. It happens sometimes in young women, a weakness undetected until it's too late. But she was healthy." James's voice broke. "Just yesterday she was—" "The heart is mysterious, my lord. I will sign the death certificate." Dr. Morrison's tone was clinical, detached. He'd signed too many such certificates in his career to be moved by grief anymore. By noon the news had spread through the county like wildfire. By evening Lord Richard Pemberton arrived at Ashford Manor, his face a careful mask of mourning that didn't quite reach his cold blue eyes. "I've lost my bride before I could even wed her," Richard said to Lord James in the drawing room, accepting a glass of brandy. A tragedy, but privately Richard felt mostly annoyance. The Ashford fortune would have been useful. Now he'd have to find another desperate family to exploit. What neither man noticed was Martha, standing outside the drawing-room door, tears streaming silently down her weathered face. She clutched a small, empty vial in her pocket, the vial that had contained the poison she'd put in Eleanor's tea. Lord Pemberton had paid her well. "Make it look natural," he'd instructed. "The wedding is too close. If she backs out now, people will talk. But if she dies, tragic but clean. I'll inherit what's left of the Ashford money as her betrothed and find a more suitable wife elsewhere." Martha had needed the money desperately. Her sister was dying, unable to afford medicine. But as she looked at Eleanor's body being prepared for burial, she realized she'd traded one life for another, and the weight of it was crushing her. According to Victorian custom, Eleanor's body had to be buried quickly, within 2 days at most. In the warm autumn weather, delay risked decomposition. The funeral was scheduled for the following night. Women from the village came to prepare the body. They washed Eleanor's face and hands, dressed her in a simple white gown, and braided her dark hair with white roses. Throughout the process, more than one woman remarked on how peaceful she looked, almost as if she were merely sleeping. "Her color's not quite right, though," muttered Mrs. Blackwood, the undertaker's wife. "Usually they're more gray. She's almost pink still." "It's the cold weather," another woman replied. "Preserves them better." They placed Eleanor in a beautiful oak coffin lined with white silk. Her hands were folded over a small bouquet of lilies. As the last light of day faded, the coffin was carried down to the drawing room, where it would remain open for viewing until the burial. All through the night, candles burned around the coffin. Lord James sat beside his daughter, unable to sleep, unable to accept that she was gone. He held her cold hand and wept. What he didn't see was the slight, almost imperceptible rise and fall of Eleanor's chest, so shallow that no mirror would catch it, so faint that no hand would feel it, but it was there. The funeral procession wound through the village like a black serpent. Torches flickered in the fog that had rolled in from the moors, thick and suffocating. The Ashford family crypt stood at the edge of St. Michael's Cemetery, a Gothic structure of grey stone covered in creeping ivy. 20 mourners followed the horse-drawn hearse, their faces hidden behind black veils and high collars. Lord James walked at the front, aged 10 years in 2 days. Richard Pemberton walked beside him, playing the role of grieving fiancé with practiced ease. The priest, Father Benedict, was a rotund man in his 70s who had presided over 3 generations of Ashford burials. He began the service as the coffin was removed from the hearse and placed on supports above the open crypt entrance. "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust." The words were familiar, comforting in their ritual. The mourners bowed their heads. The fog grew thicker, swirling around the gravestones like ghostly dancers. That's when the sound came. Hoofbeats, fast and urgent, cutting through the mist. Everyone looked up as a massive black stallion burst through the cemetery gates. The rider was a figure of darkness, a man in a long black coat that billowed behind him like wings, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "Stop!" The voice was commanding, desperate and somehow ancient. "She's not dead." The mourners gasped and drew back. Father Benedict clutched his Bible to his chest. Richard's hand went to his walking stick, which concealed a blade. The rider dismounted in one fluid motion and strode toward the coffin with inhuman speed. When he finally looked up, removing his hat, the mourners saw his face. He was perhaps 30 in appearance, with sharp aristocratic features, pale skin, and dark hair that fell to his shoulders. But it was his eyes that captured attention, deep amber, almost golden, burning with an intensity that seemed to look into one's very soul. "I am Lord Adrian Blackthorne," he announced, his voice carrying an accent that belonged to no particular region, but seemed to echo with old England itself. "And I tell you, this woman is not dead. She lives still, trapped in a state between death and life. If you bury her, you will kill her." Madness. Richard Pemberton stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Who are you to interrupt this sacred?" "I know what I speak of," Adrian cut him off, his golden eyes locking onto Richard with such force that the other man actually stepped back. "I have seen this before. I have lived long enough to recognize the signs." He turned to Dr. Morrison, who stood at the edge of the crowd. "You, doctor, did you perform a thorough examination?" "I checked for pulse and breath," Dr. Morrison stammered, unnerved by the stranger's intensity. "But did you check thoroughly? Did you use a stethoscope? Did you test for reflexes? Did you warm the body to see if circulation would return?" Adrian's questions came rapid fire, each one landing like an accusation. The doctor's silence was answer enough. Adrian moved toward the coffin. Immediately, 3 men moved to block him: Richard, Lord James, and a burly footman. "You will not touch my daughter," James roared, grief turning to protective fury. "Then you will kill her," Adrian said flatly. "Every moment she's in that coffin, buried beneath the earth, is a moment closer to true death. The trance she's in is fragile. It can be broken, but not if she's 6 feet underground in a sealed crypt." "This is insanity," Father Benedict spoke up. "The girl is dead. We have a doctor's certificate. You're obviously deranged." "Then test it," Adrian challenged. "Open the coffin. Let me examine her. If I'm wrong, if she's truly dead, you can proceed with the burial and hang me for the disruption. But if I'm right," his voice dropped to something almost pleading, "if I'm right, you'll have your daughter back, Lord Ashford." James wavered. The stranger was clearly mad, and yet there was something in his voice, something that spoke of desperate truth. "5 minutes," James heard himself say. "You have 5 minutes to prove your claim." Richard grabbed James's arm. "You can't seriously, she's my daughter." James pulled away violently. "If there's even a chance," he turned to the footman. "Open the coffin." The nails that had been hastily hammered in were pried loose. The lid lifted with a creak that sounded like a scream in the fog-thick silence. Eleanor lay as she had been placed, peaceful, beautiful, still. Adrian approached slowly, almost reverently. He knelt beside the coffin and placed 2 fingers against Eleanor's throat, not checking for pulse in the normal way, but holding them there for a long moment, his eyes closed in concentration. Then he did something that made the crowd gasp. He drew a small silver pin from his coat and pricked Eleanor's fingertip. A tiny bead of blood welled up. "Dead bodies don't bleed," Adrian said quietly. "When the heart stops, blood settles and coagulates. This blood is fresh, liquid. Her heart still beats, just too slowly for most to detect." He leaned closer, and in a voice only Eleanor could hear, if she could hear anything in her dark prison, he whispered, "Catherine, forgive me for what I must do." Then Adrian bit his own wrist, tearing the flesh, and pressed the bleeding wound to Eleanor's lips. The crowd erupted in shouts of horror and revulsion. "He's poisoning her! Devil! Stop him!" Men rushed forward, grabbing Adrian and hauling him away from the coffin. His blood dripped onto Eleanor's white gown, staining it crimson. She needs more time. Adrian struggled against the hands restraining him. The blood will break the clay. A wet, gasping cough cut him off. Every person froze. Eleanor's body convulsed. Her back arched. Her eyes flew open wide, terrified, gasping. She was alive. Eleanor's scream tore through the cemetery like a wounded animal's cry. Her body jerked upright in the coffin, hands clawing at the silk lining as if trying to escape a nightmare. Her eyes, wild and unfocused, darted around at the circle of horrified faces surrounding her. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't understand why she was surrounded by mourners, why she was dressed in burial clothes, why everything felt wrong. Eleanor, oh God, Eleanor. Lord James pushed through the frozen crowd and fell to his knees beside the coffin, reaching for his daughter with trembling hands. But Eleanor recoiled from his touch, pressing herself against the back of the coffin. Her mouth opened and closed, trying to form words, but only strangled sounds emerged. The taste in her mouth was strange, copper and something else, something that burned like fire and ice simultaneously. Give her space. Morrison finally broke from his shock and rushed forward, his professional instincts overriding his terror. She needs air. Everyone stepped back. The crowd obeyed, retreating like a tide, leaving a circle around the coffin, all except Adrian, who was still being restrained by 3 men, and Richard Pemberton, who stood apart from everyone else, his face ashen and his eyes calculating. "My daughter, you're alive." James was weeping openly now, reaching out again. This time, Eleanor didn't pull away. She grasped her father's hand like a drowning person, clutching driftwood. Father?" Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. What happened? Why am I—" Her gaze fell on the coffin she was sitting in, on the white roses scattered around her, on the black-clad mourners. "Why am I in a coffin?" "You were dead," Dr. Morrison said, examining her pulse with shaking fingers. His face had gone grey. "2 days ago, I examined you myself. You had no pulse, no breath, no—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "This is impossible. Let me go," Adrian said quietly to the men holding him. His voice held no anger, only urgency. "She needs help, real help. That poison is still in her system." "Poison?" James's head snapped up. "What poison?" "The substance that put her in the death trance," Adrian explained, still held fast by the footman. "It's a rare toxin, derived from certain plants found only in remote regions. In precise doses, it slows the body's functions to nearly nothing, undetectable heartbeat, imperceptible breathing. To all appearances, death. But it's temporary. If left untreated, however, the body will eventually succumb for real." "How do you know this?" Father Benedict demanded, his voice shaking. "How do you know any of this?" Adrian's golden eyes met the priest's. "Because I've seen it before, many times, across many centuries." The words hung in the air like a confession and a curse. "He's mad," Richard spoke up, finally finding his voice, clearly deranged. "We should summon the constable." "He saved her life," James interrupted, still holding Eleanor's hand. He looked at Adrian with an expression torn between gratitude and fear. "Mad or not, my daughter is alive because of him, or he's the one who poisoned her in the first place," Richard countered. "Think, James. A stranger appears, claiming mystical knowledge, speaking of centuries. He's obviously involved in some plot. Perhaps he poisoned her, then planned this dramatic rescue to win your favor, your trust." "No." Eleanor's weak voice cut through the argument. All eyes turned to her. She was looking directly at Adrian, her storm-gray eyes meeting his golden ones. "I know you." The words were barely audible. "I've seen you before, in my dreams. For months now, I've dreamed of you." A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Adrian's expression, carefully controlled until now, cracked, revealing something raw beneath. Pain, longing, recognition. "You remember," he breathed. "I remember something." Eleanor's free hand went to her temple. "Fragments. Images, a different time, a different place. But you were there. You've always been there. This is absurd. Richard's voice rose sharply. The girl is clearly delirious from her ordeal. She needs rest, medical attention, not the ravings of Martha. Eleanor said suddenly, her eyes clearing. Where's Martha? The crowd murmured and parted. Martha stood at the very back, trying to disappear into the shadows. But at the sound of her name, she stumbled forward, her face streaked with tears. Miss Eleanor, oh Miss Eleanor. Martha fell to her knees before the coffin. Forgive me, please forgive me. Martha, what? Eleanor began, but then understanding dawned on her face. The tea. That night, you gave me something in the tea. He paid me. Martha's confession burst out like a dam breaking. He said it would just make you sleep, that you'd wake up somewhere far from here, free from the marriage. I didn't know it would. I thought I was helping you. But then you wouldn't wake up, and the doctor said you were dead, and I realized what I'd done, what he'd really given me to. James's voice was like thunder. Who paid you? But Martha's gaze had already gone to Richard Pemberton. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard's face went through several expressions, in rapid succession. Surprise, denial, calculation, then finally cold acceptance. His hand moved to his walking stick. Seize him, James roared. But Richard was already moving. He drew the concealed blade from his walking stick and grabbed the nearest person, Father Benedict, yanking the elderly priest in front of him, as a shield. Stay back. Richard's cultivated gentleman's accent had vanished, replaced by something cruder, more desperate. I'll cut his throat, I swear it. The crowd froze. Father Benedict whimpered, the blade pressed against his wrinkled neck. Let me pass, Richard demanded, backing toward the cemetery gates. Let me pass and the priest lives. You tried to kill her, James said, his voice shaking with rage. My daughter. You poisoned my daughter. I needed the money, you fool, Richard spat. Your debts would have dragged me down with you. Better to inherit what little you had left than be shackled to a dying estate and a willful wife. But she was supposed to die properly. That incompetent Morrison was supposed to make sure she was truly dead before signing the certificate. Morrison made a choking sound of protest, but Richard ignored him. Now let me leave or the priest dies, and it will be your fault for interfering. No one moved. Richard continued backing toward the gates, dragging Father Benedict with him. Then Adrian spoke. Release the priest, Pemberton. You won't make it past those gates alive. Brave words for a man being held by 3 footmen. Richard sneered. I'm not being held, Adrian said calmly. And suddenly, he wasn't. The 3 men who'd been gripping his arms stumbled backward, their hands empty. No one had seen Adrian move. One moment he was restrained, the next he was free, standing perfectly still, his eyes locked on Richard. What? How did you? One of the footmen stammered. Last chance, Pemberton, Adrian said, taking a single step forward. Release him. Or what? You'll reveal your parlor tricks. I don't care what manner of charlatan you are. Richard pressed the blade harder against Father Benedict's throat, drawing a thin line of blood. Adrian's eyes flashed, literally flashed, like a cat's eyes catching torchlight. And then he moved. It was impossible, inhuman. One moment he was 10 feet away, the next he was directly in front of Richard, moving too fast for the eye to follow. His hand shot out and caught Richard's wrist with such force that bones audibly cracked. The blade fell from nerveless fingers. Richard screamed and released the priest, who scrambled away. Before anyone could react, Adrian had Richard lifted off the ground by his throat, holding him at arm's length, like a rag doll. You tried to kill her. Adrian's voice was no longer human. It was something ancient and terrible, echoing with barely restrained fury. You tried to bury her alive. Give me one reason. I shouldn't tear your throat out right here. Richard's face was turning purple, his feet kicking uselessly. The crowd watched in frozen horror. Adrian, no. Eleanor's voice cut through the rage. She had climbed out of the coffin and was standing on shaking legs, one hand braced against it for support. Don't kill him, please. Don't become a monster for my sake. Adrian's head turned toward her, and for a moment his eyes met hers. The fury in them warred with something else. Something softer, more human. Slowly, with visible effort, he lowered Richard to the ground and released him. Richard collapsed, gasping and clutching his throat. "The constable will handle him," Eleanor said quietly. "Let the law decide his fate." "The law," Adrian said with bitter irony. "Yes, the law." He turned to Lord James. "Your daughter still needs help. The poison must be fully purged from her system, or it will return. She'll slip back into the trance, and next time she may not wake." "Then help her," James said without hesitation. "Whatever you need, whoever you are, whatever you are, help her. Father, you can't trust him." Richard rasped from the ground, still clutching his bruised throat. "He's not human. You saw what he did. He's a demon, a monster. He saved my daughter," James said coldly, "which is more than you tried to do. Thomas, Edward, take Lord Pemberton to the manor cellar and lock him there. We'll send for the constable in the morning." 2 footmen moved to obey, hauling Richard to his feet. As they dragged him away, he screamed curses and warnings about demons and the devil's work, but no one paid him attention. Dr. Morrison approached Adrian cautiously. "What does she need? What treatment?" "An herbal compound to cleanse her blood. Warmth, rest." And Adrian hesitated, glancing at Eleanor. "And my blood?" The small amount she ingested broke the trance, but more is needed to fully counteract the poison. "Your blood?" Morrison's face twisted with revulsion. "That's barbaric, unhygienic. It could save her life," Adrian finished. "I know the medicine you practice, Dr. Morrison. I know its limits. What I offer is older, stranger, but effective." Eleanor stepped forward, still unsteady but determined. "I trust him, Father. I don't know why, but I do. I feel." She looked at Adrian, really looked at him, and something in her expression changed. Recognition flickered there, deep and old. "I feel like I've known you forever." "You have," Adrian said softly, "in ways you don't yet remember, in ways I've never been able to forget." "Then take her," James said, his voice breaking slightly. "Take my daughter and save her. But I'm coming with you. I won't let her out of my sight." Adrian nodded. "Of course. My manor is 3 miles north, near Blackthorn Forest. There's room for you and any servants Miss Eleanor requires." "I'll come too," Martha spoke up, her voice small but firm. "I owe her that much. I owe her everything after what I've done." Eleanor looked at the woman who'd been like a second mother to her, the woman who'd poisoned her on a monster's orders. Their eyes met, and after a long moment, Eleanor nodded. "Come, Martha, but we'll have much to discuss." They traveled in Adrian's carriage, a sleek black vehicle pulled by the same midnight stallion that had carried him to the cemetery. It was larger inside than it appeared from without, fitted with plush velvet seats and silver appointments that caught the moonlight streaming through the windows. Eleanor sat with her father on one side, Martha on the other. Adrian sat across from them, his face now hidden in shadow, his golden eyes the only visible feature, watching Eleanor with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow wasn't. "How long have you been watching me?" Eleanor asked suddenly. Adrian was silent for a moment. 6 months. "Since your birthday last spring." "Why?" "Because I recognized you. Because I've been searching for you for 200 years. Because I've failed to save you so many times before that I couldn't bear to fail again." Eleanor's father stiffened. "What do you mean? 200 years failed before? Speak plainly, sir." Adrian's gaze didn't leave Eleanor's face. "Do you believe in reincarnation, Lord Ashford?" "Why, the Church teaches that. The Church teaches many things, but the soul is older than any church, and its journeys are longer than any doctrine acknowledges." Adrian leaned forward slightly, into the light. "In 1647, I loved a woman named Catherine Whitmore. She looked exactly like your daughter, same hair, same eyes, same spirit. We were to be married. What happened to her?" Eleanor asked, though some part of her already knew the answer. "She died 3 days before our wedding, killed by those who hunted my kind." Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands gripped his knees with white-knuckled force. I've been cursed to watch her soul return, again and again, in different bodies, different lives. Always, she dies before her 25th birthday. Always, I'm too late to save her, or my intervention causes her death. The curse ensures I suffer eternally, hope renewed, then destroyed over and over across centuries. You're kind, Martha whispered. What are you? Adrian's smile was bitter. I think you know, Martha. I think you all know, even if you won't speak it aloud. Vampire, Eleanor said the word that everyone was thinking but afraid to voice. Adrian nodded slowly. Yes. I was turned in 5045, against my will by a creature older than memory. I've lived for 3 centuries since, watching the world change, watching everyone I've ever cared for die, and watching Catherine, my Catherine, return and die, an endless cycle of torture. But I'm not dead, Eleanor pointed out. You saved me this time. Did I? Adrian's eyes burned into hers. Or have I simply delayed the inevitable? Every time I've intervened before, warned her away from danger, tried to protect her, it only caused disaster. In 1747, Catherine was Anne Blackwell. I kept her from a carriage accident that would have killed her. She was grateful. We grew close. And on her 24th birthday, she was murdered by a vampire hunter who tracked me to her door. In 1847, she was Mary Sutton. I stayed away from her entirely, hoping that would break the curse. She died of a mysterious illness 3 days before her 25th birthday, the same day she would have met me at a masquerade ball. The curse is unbreakable. The pattern always completes. When is my 25th birthday? Eleanor asked, though she already knew. 3 weeks, Adrian said quietly. The curse will try to claim you in 3 weeks. The carriage fell silent, except for the rhythmic sound of hooves on the dirt road. The forest had grown thick around them, ancient trees pressing close, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moon. Then we have 3 weeks to break the curse, Eleanor said firmly. 3 weeks to change what's been unchangeable for 200 years. You don't understand, Adrian said desperately. I've tried everything. Magic, prayer, deals with darker things than myself. Nothing works. The curse is absolute. No curse is absolute, Eleanor countered. You said yourself, I've died before my 25th birthday in every life. But this time, I've already died, or appeared to die, and I'm still here. Perhaps that's the key. Perhaps dying and returning has already fulfilled the curse's requirement. Adrian stared at her, and for the first time, something like hope flickered in his ancient eyes. I never thought of it that way. In every other life, the death was final, but you've already passed through death's door and returned. Perhaps the pattern has been broken, Eleanor finished. Or perhaps it's been delayed. Lord James interjected grimly. Either way, we need to ensure my daughter survives the next 3 weeks. Can you do that, Lord Blackthorn? Can you protect her? With my life, Adrian said, and the weight of centuries was in those words. With my eternal soul, if I still possess one. The carriage emerged from the forest into a clearing. Before them stood Blackthorn Manor. It was a Gothic masterpiece. All spires and towers, arched windows and carved stone. Gargoyles perched along the roofline, their faces twisted in eternal snarls. Ivy covered much of the western wall, and lights burned in several windows, giving the place an almost welcoming appearance, despite its ominous architecture. It's beautiful, Eleanor breathed. It's a prison, Adrian corrected. A beautiful prison I've lived in for 300 years, waiting for a curse to be broken or for mercy to let me die. But tonight, for the first time in longer than I can remember, it feels like a home. The carriage stopped at the entrance. Adrian descended first, then offered his hand to help Eleanor down. The moment their skin touched, a shock ran through both of them, a recognition deeper than memory, older than thought. Eleanor stumbled slightly, images flashing through her mind. A stone cottage, a summer garden, a man with Adrian's face, younger somehow, laughing in sunlight. A promise exchanged beneath an oak tree, then darkness, pain, screaming, a name torn from dying lips. Adrian, Catherine. Adrian caught her as her knees buckled. I remember, Eleanor whispered. Oh God, Adrian, I remember dying. I remember you holding me. I remember promising I'd find you again. Tears streamed down her face. I promised I'd find you, and I did. We found each other. Every time we found each other. Adrian pulled her close, and for the first time in 200 years he wept. 2 centuries of grief, loneliness and desperate hope poured out of him as he held the woman he'd loved across lifetimes. Lord James and Martha watched too, moved to speak. Even in their confusion and fear, they recognized something sacred in the reunion before them. Finally, Adrian pulled back, gently wiping the tears from Eleanor's face. Come inside. We'll purge the poison from your system, and then we'll plan. We have 3 weeks to break a curse that's held for 2 centuries. But for the first time, I believe we might actually succeed. We will succeed, Eleanor said with quiet conviction. Because I'm not Catherine anymore. I'm not Anne or Mary or any of the others. I'm Eleanor, and I remember them all. Every life, every death. The memories are coming back, and this time, I'm going to fight. Adrian smiled, a real smile, the first in longer than he could remember. Then God help the curse, because an Eleanor who remembers, who fights, that's something the curse has never faced before. They entered Blackthorn Manor together, the heavy doors closing behind them, with a sound like fate sealing itself. Behind them, unseen in the shadows of the forest, something watched, something old and patient. The curse had waited 200 years. It could wait 3 weeks more. After all, the pattern always completed itself. Always. The interior of Blackthorn Manor was a study in contrasts. Gothic grandeur mixed with unexpected warmth. Candlelight flickered from silver candelabras, casting dancing shadows across walls lined with paintings spanning centuries. Persian rugs softened the stone floors, and a massive fireplace dominated the entrance hall, flames already crackling within, as if the house itself had anticipated their arrival. Mr. Garrett, Adrian called out, his voice echoing through the vast space. Within moments, an elderly man appeared from a side corridor. He was perhaps 70, with silver hair neatly combed back and a face that spoke of a life spent in service. But his eyes, sharp and knowing, held no surprise at the scene before him. Master Adrian, he said with a slight bow, I prepared the guest chambers when I felt you approaching. 3 rooms, as you'll need. His gaze fell on Eleanor, and his expression softened. Miss Catherine, welcome home. Eleanor, she corrected gently, though she felt the rightness of the other name in her bones. My name is Eleanor now, Mr. Garrett. The old man's eyes grew misty. Of course, Miss Eleanor. Forgive an old man his memories. I knew the first Miss Catherine, you see. Served her and the master before. He trailed off, clearing his throat. But that's ancient history. Come, you must all be exhausted. Shall I prepare tea? Something stronger. Eleanor needs the purging treatment first, Adrian said, guiding her toward a sweeping staircase. The poison must be cleansed from her system tonight, or it could resurface. Lord Ashford, Martha, Garrett will show you to your rooms and provide whatever you need. This will take several hours. James hesitated, paternal instinct warring with trust. I should stay with her. Father, it's all right, Eleanor assured him, placing a hand on his arm. I trust her. I know it seems mad, but I do. I always have. James looked between his daughter and the vampire who'd saved her life, then finally nodded. Very well, but I want to see her before I retire. I need to know she's truly safe. You have my word, Adrian said solemnly. Miss Garrett led James and Martha away, leaving Adrian and Eleanor alone in the vast entrance hall. The fire crackled. Outside, wind howled through the forest, like a living thing. Are you frightened? Adrian asked softly. Eleanor considered the question honestly. I should be. Everything that's happened. Dying, waking in a coffin, Learning about vampires and curses and past lives, it should terrify me. But instead, I feel, she searched for the word, complete, as if I've been wandering lost my entire life and have finally found my way home. Adrian's expression was torn between joy and sorrow. I've dreamed of hearing those words for 200 years. But Eleanor, you must understand, this home is not without its dangers. I'm not without my dangers. I'm a monster, however much I wish otherwise. Are you? Eleanor stepped closer to him, looking up into those golden eyes. Have you killed innocents, fed on the unwilling, spread terror and death? Adrian's jaw tightened. I've killed more than I can count, but never the innocent, not in 3 centuries. I feed only on those who deserve death, murderers, rapists, those who prey on the weak. I've made myself judge, jury, and executioner in the shadows. Perhaps that's monstrous in its own way, or perhaps it's justice in a world where justice often fails. Eleanor countered. You're not the monster you fear you are, Adrian. A true monster wouldn't have spent 2 centuries mourning a lost love, wouldn't have stopped Richard from hurting Father Benedict, wouldn't have wept at my coffin. You're seeing what you want to see, Adrian said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm seeing what's there. Eleanor reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. The gesture felt ancient familiar, as if she'd done it 1,000 times before. I'm seeing the man I've loved across lifetimes, the man I died calling for, the man I promised to find again. Adrian caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. His skin was cool but not cold like marble warmed by moonlight. If you remember Catherine's death, then you remember what loving me cost her, cost all of you. Perhaps the curse exists, because we're not meant to be together. Perhaps the universe itself is trying to keep us apart for a reason. Then the universe can go to hell, Eleanor said with sudden fierceness. I didn't claw my way back from death to be told I can't love you. I won't accept that fate, Adrian. I won't. For a moment, they stood frozen, her hand against his face, his eyes searching hers. Then Adrian pulled away gently, deliberately. Come, we need to prepare the treatment. Philosophy and declarations can wait until you're truly safe. He led her up the grand staircase to the 2nd floor, then down a long corridor lined with more paintings. Eleanor noticed that several were portraits of women, all with dark hair and grey eyes, all bearing an uncanny resemblance to her. Every incarnation, Adrian explained, seeing her gaze. I commissioned portraits when I could. When I couldn't, I painted them myself from memory. A gallery of grief, Mr. Garrett calls it. A shrine to failure, or a testament to love that refuses to die, Eleanor said softly. They entered a room that was part laboratory, part apothecary. Shelves lined every wall, filled with bottles, jars, and ancient books. A large table dominated the center, and beside it stood something that looked like a medieval medical chair. This looks like a torture chamber, Eleanor observed, trying to lighten the mood. In some ways it is, Adrian admitted. The purging process isn't pleasant. The poison must be drawn out through the blood, and that requires... He gestured to a setup of tubes and bottles. A transfusion of sorts. I'll extract your poisoned blood and replace it with my own. My blood will neutralize any remaining toxin and strengthen your system. Eleanor paled slightly. How much blood? Enough to make you weak for several days, but not enough to endanger your life. Adrian's expression was grave. I've done this before, with others poisoned in different ways. I know the limits, but I won't lie to you. It will hurt. The transformation of blood always does. Transformation of blood always does. Transformation, Eleanor caught the word. Will it change me, make me like you? No, Adrian said firmly. To become a vampire requires drinking vampire blood to the point of death, then being fed vampire blood during the transition. What I'm offering is healing, nothing more. Though, he hesitated. My blood will leave traces, enhanced senses for a while, increased strength, a slight sensitivity to sunlight. The effects will fade within a week. Eleanor moved to the chair and sat down without hesitation. Then let's begin. I want this poison out of me. I want to face whatever comes next at full strength. Adrian studied her for a long moment, admiration clear in his eyes. You're braver than Catherine was, than any of them were. They didn't remember, Eleanor pointed out. They faced all this without knowing what you are, what they'd been. I have the advantage of memory, however fragmented, and I have something else. She met his gaze steadily. I have anger. Whoever cursed us, whatever force keeps tearing us apart. I'm furious at it, and fury makes you strong. Adrian's lips curved into a small smile. Then let's hope fury is enough. He began preparing the equipment, his movements practiced and efficient. This will take approximately 3 hours. During that time, you may experience hallucinations, fever dreams. The blood transformation can unlock buried memories. You may see things from past lives with perfect clarity. Try not to be afraid of what you see. I'm not afraid of the past, Eleanor said. I'm only afraid of losing the future. Adrian positioned the needles carefully, one in her arm to extract blood, another ready to introduce his own. He pricked his wrist with a small blade, letting his blood flow into a crystal container. It was darker than normal blood, almost black, but it moved with strange vitality, as if alive with its own consciousness. Ready? He asked. Eleanor nodded. Adrian opened the valve. Pain lanced through Eleanor's arm as her blood began to flow out, but it was nothing compared to the sensation when Adrian's blood entered her veins. Fire and ice, life and death, eternity compressed into a single moment. Her back arched against the chair, her mouth opened in a silent scream, and then the visions came, crashing over her like waves. She was Catherine Whitmore, 17 years old, walking through a summer garden. The year was 1644, and England was tearing itself apart in civil war. But here, in this hidden corner of the countryside, there was peace. Miss Catherine, wait for me. She turned to see a young man running toward her. Adrian, but not the Adrian of 3 centuries hence. This Adrian was 22, human, with warm skin and a heartbeat. He wore the simple clothes of a minor nobleman, his dark hair tied back with a leather cord. You run too fast, he complained, catching up to her. Where's the fire? In here, Catherine tapped her chest, laughing. I'm too full of life to walk slowly. The world is too beautiful to waste time being proper. My scandalous Catherine, Adrian said fondly. He produced a white rose from behind his back. For you, though no flower could match your beauty, flatterer. But she took the rose, lifting it to her nose. When will you speak to my father? Tomorrow, Adrian promised. I've finally saved enough to offer a proper settlement. We'll be married by autumn, and then we'll travel. Paris, Rome, Constantinople, everywhere you've dreamed of going. I don't need everywhere, Catherine said softly. I just need you. They kissed beneath the oak tree, unaware that they were being watched from the shadows by something ancient and hungry. 3 years later, Catherine was 20, and Adrian was gone, vanished 3 months ago without explanation. She'd searched everywhere, questioned everyone, but he'd simply disappeared as if the earth had swallowed him. Then, one night, he returned. He appeared in her garden at midnight, and she knew immediately that something was wrong. His skin was too pale, his eyes strange, his movements too fluid. Adrian, she approached cautiously. Where have you been? What happened to you? Stay back, Catherine. His voice was anguished. Please, I'm not what I was. I don't care. I've been half mad without you. Whatever you've become, whatever's happened, we'll face it together. You can't face this. He was weeping, though the tears were tinged pink with blood. I was taken by a creature, changed, turned into something that should never exist. I'm a vampire, Catherine, a monster. I don't believe in monsters, Catherine said firmly, closing the distance between them. I believe in you. I've killed people. Adrian confessed, fed on them. I tried to resist, but the hunger is overwhelming. I'm damned, Catherine. My soul is lost. Then we'll find it again. She took his cold hands in her warm ones. Together, as we always planned. They spent 3 years trying to find a way to return Adrian to humanity. 3 years of research, of consulting mystics and scholars, of desperate hope. And Catherine never wavered in her love, until the hunters came. They tracked Adrian to Catherine's home on a winter night in Catherine tried to protect him, standing between Adrian and the men with silver blades and wooden stakes. "He's not a monster," she screamed. "He's good. He's the leader of the hunters." A grim man with a scar across his face grabbed Catherine by the hair. "Any who protect the damned are damned themselves." He cut her throat. Adrian's howl of grief and rage brought down the house. He slaughtered the hunters, every one of them, but it was too late. Catherine died in his arms, her blood pooling beneath them, her last words a whispered promise. "I'll find you again. I swear, I'll find you." The vision shifted again, faster now, showing Eleanor snippets of other lives. Anne Blackwell in 1747, dying from a poisoned blade meant for Adrian. Mary Sutton in 1847, succumbing to the same mysterious illness that had claimed Eleanor. Sarah Thornton in 1897, caught in a fire that destroyed half of London's East End while searching for Adrian. Catherine Price in 1947, killed in the Blitz while Adrian was on the other side of the city. Each death different, each life cut short before the 25th birthday, each ending with a promise to return, to find him again. And woven through all the visions was a figure in shadows, a woman with silver eyes and a cruel smile, watching each tragedy unfold. The one who'd cursed the vampire who'd turned Adrian and stolen his humanity, furious when he'd chosen Catherine over embracing his dark nature. "You'll suffer eternally," the silver-eyed woman had hissed in 1647, standing over Catherine's body. "Every time she returns, every time you dare to hope, I'll tear her away from you. Your punishment for refusing me, for choosing mortal love over immortal power, will be eternal heartbreak." Eleanor gasped back to consciousness, Adrian's blood now fully integrated with her own. She was drenched in sweat, trembling, tears streaming down her face. "I saw her," Eleanor whispered, "the one who cursed us, a female vampire. She turned you, and when you chose me over her, she cursed us both." Adrian had been monitoring the transfusion process, but at her words he froze. "You remember her, Morgana? Is that her name?" Eleanor gripped the arms of the chair, still shaking. "She's the key to breaking the curse. We can't break it by running or hiding. We have to confront her directly." "Morgana hasn't been seen in a century," Adrian said grimly. "After Catherine's death in 1947, she vanished. I searched for years, hoping to kill her and end the curse, but she's a ghost. Then we make her come to us," Eleanor said, her voice gaining strength despite her weakened state. "She'll want to see her curse fulfilled one last time. We use that. We bait a trap." "Absolutely not," Adrian said firmly. "I won't risk you. Not again. Not after." "You don't have a choice," Eleanor interrupted. "Because I'm not Catherine anymore. I'm not any of the others. I remember everything now, every life, every death, every moment of loving you. That makes me dangerous to her in ways the others never were. She's had power over us because we kept forgetting, kept walking blindly into the same trap. But I remember, and I'm done being her victim." Adrian stared at her, this woman who wore Eleanor's face, but spoke with the accumulated wisdom and fury of 6 lifetimes. "You're magnificent," he breathed. "Terrifying and magnificent." "I'm angry," Eleanor corrected. 200 years of stolen happiness. 200 years of cutting our love short. I want our vengeance, Adrian. I want our freedom. And I want our future. Whatever it takes. "Then we plan," Adrian said, carefully removing the needles and bandaging her arm. "But not tonight. Tonight, you rest. The blood transformation takes time to fully integrate. Tomorrow, when you're stronger, we'll devise a strategy to draw Morgana out and end this curse once and for all." He helped Eleanor stand, supporting her when her legs wobbled. "Come, there's a guest room prepared for you. Soft bed, warm blankets, everything you need." But as they left the laboratory, Eleanor asked, "Where is your room?" Adrian hesitated. "At the end of this corridor." "Why?" "Because that's where I want to sleep tonight," Eleanor said simply. "Not in a guest room, not separated from you. I've spent 6 lifetimes dying before I could truly be with you. I won't waste another moment we have together. Eleanor, you need rest, real rest. And I don't trust myself. Your blood is singing to me right now, calling to the predator in me. Being close to you, in such an intimate space. Do you want to hurt me?" Eleanor asked directly. "God, no, never. Do you want to turn me without my consent? The very thought horrifies me." "Then what are you afraid of?" Adrian's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm afraid of how much I want you, how much I've always wanted you. I'm afraid that if I let myself have even a moment of happiness with you, the curse will strike harder. I'm afraid that I'm the danger, that my love itself is poisonous." Eleanor reached up and pulled his face down to hers. "Then let's be poisoned together, because I'm not spending one more night without you, not when we have so few nights left before the curse tries to claim me again." She kissed him, not the chaste kiss of Catherine in the garden, but a kiss that held 6 lifetimes of longing, of love deferred, of death interrupted. For a moment Adrian resisted, then he surrendered, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her close. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and sacred, a promise and a prayer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. 3 weeks, Eleanor whispered against his lips. "We have 3 weeks to break a curse and claim our forever. Let's not waste a single moment of them." Adrian lifted her into his arms. She was light as air, still weak from the blood purging. "Then come with me, my love, my Catherine, my Eleanor, my every lifetime." He carried her down the corridor to his chambers, and for the first time in 200 years, Adrian Blackthorne dared to hope that this time might be different, that this time love might actually win. Behind them, unseen, Mr. Garrett watched from the shadow. The old man's eyes were sad, but knowing. He'd seen this hope before, in other lifetimes. He'd watched it shatter, but he said nothing. Hope, after all, was all they had, even if it was hope built on a curse that had never once failed to claim its due. Richard Pemberton sat in the darkness, his wrists bound, his throat still bruised from Adrian's grip. The footman had locked him in and left him here to await the constable's arrival at dawn. But Richard wasn't afraid. He was smiling, because in his coat pocket, hidden from the hasty search the footman had conducted, was a small silver whistle, a gift from a mysterious woman who'd approached him months ago with an interesting proposition. "When the time comes," she'd told him, her silver eyes gleaming in the darkness, "blow this whistle. I'll hear it, no matter where I am. And I'll come to collect what's owed." Richard pulled out the whistle now and brought it to his lips. The sound it made was beyond human hearing, a frequency that only certain creatures could detect. A summoning, a call to darkness. Somewhere far away, silver eyes opened in the night. Morgana smiled. "So," she whispered to the darkness, "it's finally time to end this game. Time to collect my due. Time to make Adrian Blackthorne suffer as he's never suffered before." She began to move, a shadow among shadows, traveling faster than thought, toward the place where her ancient curse would finally inevitably claim its final victim. Eleanor Ashford had 3 weeks to live, but Morgana intended to make them the longest, most agonizing 3 weeks of Adrian's eternal life. After all, she'd been patient for 2 centuries. What was 3 more weeks before her revenge was complete? Eleanor woke to the sensation of safety, something she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. The bed beneath her was impossibly soft, the blankets heavy and warm, and wrapped around her waist was an arm that felt like home. Adrian's. She opened her eyes to find herself in a room bathed in the grey light of early morning. Heavy velvet curtains blocked most of the sun, but thin streams of light filtered through, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny spirits. The room itself was breathtaking. Dark wood panels covered the walls, interspersed with more paintings, landscapes this time, not portraits. A massive fireplace stood cold and empty. Bookshelves lined one entire wall, filled with volumes that looked ancient and priceless. But Eleanor's attention was drawn to the man beside her. Adrian lay perfectly still, his eyes closed, his breathing so shallow it was barely perceptible. In sleep, or whatever state vampires entered during daylight hours, he looked younger somehow, more vulnerable. The centuries of pain that usually shadowed his features had smoothed away, leaving only the face of the young man Catherine had fallen in love with in a summer garden so long ago. Eleanor reached out carefully and traced the line of his jaw, just as she had the night before. His skin was cool but not unpleasantly so, like touching marble that had been kept in a cellar, away from both heat and cold. "You're staring," Adrian murmured, without opening his eyes. A small smile played at his lips. "You're awake," Eleanor replied. "I thought vampires were supposed to be unconscious during the day. Common misconception. We're lethargic during sunlight hours. Yes, our power diminishes, but we don't become corpses." He opened his eyes, those golden irises meeting hers. "How do you feel?" Eleanor considered. Her body felt strange, different. There was a humming energy beneath her skin, as if her blood itself had become electric. "Strong," she said finally, "stronger than I've ever felt." "Is this your blood?" "Yeah, the effects are temporary, but while they last, you'll have enhanced senses and strength. It's my blood's way of healing your body, of pushing out the last traces of poison." Adrian sat up, the blankets falling away to reveal that he wore only a loose white shirt, open at the collar. "Any pain, dizziness?" "None, actually. I feel—" Eleanor paused, listening. "I can hear my father snoring 3 rooms away, and Martha moving around downstairs, and something in the forest, multiple somethings, heartbeats. Dozens of them. Dear," Adrian confirmed. "There's a herd that lives in the eastern part of my land. Your hearing has been enhanced. It will fade over the next few days as my blood integrates fully with yours and then dissipates." He studied her face carefully. "How are your memories?" "Still clear, crystal clear," Eleanor assured him. "Every life, every death, every moment with you." She reached for his hand. "I remember the night you proposed to Catherine. You were so nervous you dropped the ring twice." Adrian's laugh was surprised and delighted. "You remember that? I thought you'd forgotten." Catherine pretended not to notice. "Catherine noticed everything about you," Eleanor said softly, "just as Anne did, and Mary, and all the others. We always loved you completely, Adrian, even when we didn't remember why." His expression grew somber. "And I loved you across lifetimes, through every death. Sometimes I thought the curse was actually a blessing in disguise. At least I got to see you again, even if only briefly. At least I wasn't alone forever." "You won't be alone anymore," Eleanor promised. "Not if I have anything to say about it." A knock at the door interrupted the moment. "Master Adrian?" Mr. Garrett's voice came through the heavy wood. "Forgive the intrusion, but Lord Ashford is awake and asking after his daughter. And there's another matter that requires your immediate attention." Adrian and Eleanor exchanged glances. "Come in, Garrett," Adrian called. The elderly butler entered, carrying a silver tray with tea and correspondence. His eyes tactfully avoided the bed where Adrian and Eleanor sat together. "Lord Ashford is in the breakfast room, increasingly agitated. He wishes to assure himself of Miss Eleanor's well-being. I took the liberty of telling him she's resting comfortably, but he's quite insistent." "I'll go to him," Eleanor said, starting to rise, but Adrian's hand on her arm stopped her. "You said there was another matter?" Adrian addressed Mr. Garrett, something in the butler's tone having caught his attention. Mr. Garrett's expression darkened. "Indeed, sir. This arrived an hour ago." He lifted an envelope from the tray, black wax sealed with a silver crest. "Hand-delivered by a messenger who vanished before I could question him. The seal is—" He hesitated. "The seal is hers, Master Adrian." Adrian's entire body went rigid. He took the envelope with hands that trembled slightly, staring at the silver crest. a rose intertwined with thorns, forming the shape of a broken heart. "Morgana," he breathed. Eleanor felt ice slide down her spine. "She knows we're here. Already. She always knows," Adrian said bitterly. He broke the seal and unfolded the letter within. The paper was expensive, the handwriting elegant and cruel. "My dearest Adrian, 2 centuries, and still you persist in this futile hope. How deliciously tragic. I must commend your latest Catherine Eleanor, is it, on her resourcefulness. Dying and returning is quite the clever loophole. For a moment, I almost thought you might have broken my curse. Almost. But curses, my darling, are not broken by tricks or cleverness. They're broken by sacrifice, and we both know you're far too selfish to make the sacrifice required. You proved that 200 years ago when you chose mortality over eternity, weakness over power, her over me. So here's my offer. End it yourself. Kill her now, before the curse does. Give her a quick, painless death in your arms, and I'll release you both. She'll finally rest, and you can move on to an eternity unburdened by hope. Or don't. Let the next 3 weeks play out. Let yourself believe that this time will be different. Watch as I tear her apart, piece by piece, while you stand helpless. Again, the choice, as always, is yours. With eternal malice, Morgana. P.S. Thank you for leaving Lord Pemberton so conveniently accessible. He's proven most useful. Do give him my regards when you find what's left of him." Adrian crushed the letter in his fist, his eyes blazing with fury. "She's freed Pemberton, or killed him. Either way, she's here. In the area. Then we need to find her," Eleanor said, climbing out of bed. She was still wearing the dress from the night before. Wrinkled now, but serviceable. "We need to confront her before she has time to set whatever trap she's planning." "Absolutely not," Adrian said sharply. "You'll stay here behind the protective wards I've placed around this manor. Morgana can't enter without invitation, and she'll never receive one. And what will you do? Go hunting for a vampire who's had 2 centuries to prepare for this moment? She wants you to come after her, Adrian. It's part of her game. Then what do you suggest?" Adrian demanded, frustration and fear making his voice harsh. "We do what I said last night. We set our own trap. We bait her with the one thing she can't resist, watching us be happy together." Eleanor's voice was calm, controlled. "She's obsessed with making you suffer. The thing that will hurt you most is losing me again. So we show her that we're not afraid, that we're living as if the curse doesn't exist. It will drive her mad with rage, make her reckless." "You're asking me to use you as bait," Adrian said flatly. "I'm asking you to trust that I'm stronger than I was in previous lives. I have something the others didn't. Memory, knowledge, and your blood running through my veins." Eleanor moved to him, taking his face in her hands. "I'm not a helpless damsel anymore, Adrian. I'm a woman who's died 5 times and come back. I'm a woman who remembers 2 centuries of loving you. That makes me dangerous to Morgana in ways she's never experienced." Adrian closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "I can't lose you again. I won't survive it. Then don't lose me. Fight with me, not for me." Eleanor's voice was fierce. "We break this curse together, or we don't break it at all." Before Adrian could respond, Mr. Garrett cleared his throat delicately. "Forgive me, but Lord Ashford is becoming quite vocal in his concern. Perhaps Miss Eleanor should reassure him before he works himself into an apoplexy." Eleanor nodded. "You're right. I'll go to Father." She turned back to Adrian. "We'll continue this discussion after breakfast. But Adrian, I mean what I said. We face Morgana together." She left the room before he could argue, Mr. Garrett following behind her. Adrian stood alone in his chamber, Morgana's letter still crushed in his hand. The words echoed in his mind. "Kill her now, give her a quick, painless death, and I'll release you both." It was a lie, of course. Morgana's promises were poison disguised as mercy, but the dark thought crept in regardless. What if killing Eleanor was the only way to save her? What if death by his hand, quick and gentle, was preferable to whatever torture Morgana had planned. No, he shook his head violently, dispelling the thought. That was exactly what Morgana wanted, to make him doubt, to make him destroy the thing he loved most with his own hands. He wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Not this time. Lord James Ashford looked like he'd aged another 10 years overnight. His hair, already grey, seemed to have whitened further. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands shook slightly as he lifted his teacup. When Eleanor entered the breakfast room, he leapt to his feet, so quickly his chair fell backward. "Eleanor, thank God." He rushed to her, embracing her tightly. "I barely slept. I kept having nightmares that you'd vanished again, that all of this was some fever dream, and you were still in that coffin. I'm here, Father," Eleanor soothed, returning his embrace. "I'm alive and well. Better than well, actually. I feel stronger than I have in years." James pulled back, studying her face. "You do look different. There's color in your cheeks, light in your eyes. Whatever that creature did to heal you seems to have worked." His expression grew troubled. "But Eleanor, we need to discuss what happens next. We can't stay here. We need to return home, contact the authorities about Pemberton, resume our normal lives." "Father," Eleanor gently cut him off, "our normal lives don't exist anymore. Not after what's happened. Not after what I've learned." She guided him back to his chair and sat beside him. Martha, who had been standing quietly in the corner, moved forward to pour fresh tea. "I know this is difficult to accept," Eleanor continued. "I know you want to pretend that everything can return to how it was. But it can't. I'm bound to Adrian in ways that transcend this lifetime, and there's a threat, a serious threat, that we need to face before I can ever be truly free." "The vampire woman," James said heavily, "the one who cursed you. Lord Blackthorne told me about her last night, after you'd fallen asleep. Eleanor, this is madness. Curses, reincarnation, vampires, none of this should be real, but it is real," Eleanor said gently. "You've seen the proof. You watched me die and return. You saw Adrian's speed and strength. You can't deny what your own eyes have witnessed." James buried his face in his hands. "I know, God help me, I know. But what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to protect you from something like this?" "You can't," Eleanor admitted. "This is beyond your power to fix, Father. But you can support me, and trust Adrian. Trust him." James looked up sharply. "He's a vampire, Eleanor. A creature that feeds on blood. How can I trust him with my daughter?" "Because he's loved me for 200 years, Eleanor said simply. "Because he's spent lifetimes trying to save me, to protect me, even when it cost him everything. Because when I was in that death trance, he's the one who recognized it and stopped my burial. Father, Adrian is the reason I'm alive, or he's the reason you're in danger." James countered. "If this Morgana creature cursed you because of him, then maybe the safest thing would be to stay away from him. Break whatever connection exists between you." Eleanor's expression hardened. "I won't do that. I can't. And even if I could, it wouldn't help. The curse follows me regardless of whether I'm with Adrian or not. Mary Sutton never even met him in her lifetime. He stayed away deliberately, hoping it would break the pattern. She still died 3 days before her 25th birthday. Martha, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Lord Ashford, forgive me for speaking out of turn, but I've been watching Miss Eleanor since she woke this morning. Whatever Lord Blackthorne's blood did to heal her, it's made her stronger, sharper. She moves differently now, more confidently. Maybe she finally has a chance to survive what the others couldn't." James looked at his daughter with new eyes, seeing what Martha described. Eleanor did seem different, not just physically stronger, but possessed of a certainty, a presence she'd never had before. "What do you need from me?" he finally asked, his voice defeated, but accepting. "Stay here where it's safe," Eleanor said. "Let Adrian and I handle Morgana. And when this is over, if we survive, don't ask me to choose between you and him. Because I can't. I won't. James's eyes filled with tears. You truly love him. This vampire. This cursed creature. I love him more than life. Eleanor confirmed. I've loved him across 6 lifetimes. I've died calling his name. And if I have to die again, I'll do it knowing I spent my last days with him, rather than running from the only love I've ever known. Before James could respond, the breakfast room door burst open. Adrian stood in the doorway, his face grave. They found Pemberton, he announced. What's left of him? The constable had been summoned from the village at dawn, after a farmer discovered Richard Pemberton's body in his field. By the time Adrian and Eleanor arrived, over James's protests, a crowd had gathered. The sight was gruesome. Pemberton lay sprawled in the center of the field, his body twisted at impossible angles. His throat had been torn out, but not by animal teeth. The wound was too precise, too deliberate, and his face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror. But most disturbing was what had been carved into his chest. A message, cut deep into the flesh. 3 weeks. Tick-tock. Sweet merciful God. The constable, a portly man named Williams, breathed, his face green. What manner of beast could do this? No beast, Adrian said grimly. He knelt beside the body, examining it with clinical detachment. This was done by something with intelligence and malice, something that wanted to send a message. Eleanor stood beside him, forcing herself to look at the body without flinching. The others might have been horrified, but she felt only cold calculation. Morgana had made her first move. This was a declaration of war. The message is for us, Eleanor said quietly, so only Adrian could hear. She's counting down the days until my 25th birthday, reminding us that the clock is ticking. She's also demonstrating her cruelty, Adrian replied, equally quiet. Pemberton was scum, but he didn't deserve this. She's showing us what she's capable of, trying to frighten us into submission. Is it working? Then we have 2 days to prepare, Mr. Garrett said. I'll need to gather components for the ritual. Some of them are difficult to obtain. Whatever you need, Adrian said. Whatever it costs. This ends in 2 days, one way or another. Adrian and Eleanor spent their hours together as if they were already living the mortal life they hoped to claim. They walked through the autumn forest hand in hand, watching the leaves fall. They sat by the fire and talked about the future they'd build. A small cottage somewhere quiet, perhaps by the sea. Children, maybe, if the ritual allowed it. A garden, peace. They didn't speak of the alternative. Lord James watched his daughter with a father's helpless sorrow, knowing he couldn't protect her from what was coming. Martha prepared meals that Eleanor barely touched, her stomach too tight with anticipation. Miss Garrett worked tirelessly, gathering the components needed for the ritual, herbs that only grew in moonlight, water from a spring that had never seen sun, blood freely given from both parties. And through it all, the clock ticked steadily toward midnight. The ritual would be performed in the same room where Adrian had purged the poison from Eleanor's system weeks ago, the laboratory that was part apothecary, part ancient magic. But tonight it had been transformed. Candles filled every surface, their flames casting dancing shadows across walls, painted with symbols in languages older than Latin. A circle had been drawn on the floor in salt mixed with ash, the boundary between old life and new. In the center stood 2 chairs facing each other, with a small table between them holding a silver chalice. Eleanor entered the room just before midnight, wearing a simple white dress. Her dark hair hung loose around her shoulders, and her grey eyes held no fear, only determination. Adrian was already there, dressed in black, his golden eyes fixed on her as she approached. For a moment they simply looked at each other, taking in what might be their last sight of each other, as they currently were. "Are you afraid?" Adrian asked softly. Terrified, Eleanor admitted, but more afraid of not trying, of letting Morgana win, of dying without fighting. "I've been fighting for 200 years, Adrian said, "but I've never fought as hard as I'm going to fight tonight. For you, for us, for the forever we deserve. Miss Garrett entered, carrying the ancient grimoire. Behind him came Lord James and Martha, who would serve as witnesses. Their faces were drawn, aged by fear and love. "It's time," Mr. Garrett announced quietly. Eleanor and Adrian took their seats in the circle, facing each other. The old butler placed the grimoire on the table beside the chalice and opened it to the marked page. "The ritual of mutual severance," he read aloud. "A spell of transformation and liberation performed only when two souls are bound by forces beyond their control. The price is high: immortality surrendered, mortality enhanced, and absolute trust between participants. If either party falters, both will die." He looked up, meeting Adrian's eyes, then Eleanor's. "Are you certain?" "Yes," they answered, in unison. Garrett nodded and began to read the incantation in a language that predated English by millennia. The air in the room grew thick, heavy with power. The candle flames bent toward the circle as if pulled by invisible hands. "Adrian Blackthorne," Miss Garrett intoned, switching to English so all could understand. "Do you willingly surrender your immortal nature? Do you accept the return of mortality, the aging, the weakness, the inevitable death that awaits all humans?" Adrian's voice was steady. "I do." "Eleanor Ashford," Miss Garrett continued, "do you willingly accept enhancement beyond human norm? Do you accept the burdens and blessings that come with power borrowed from darkness?" "I do," Eleanor replied firmly. "Then drink," Mr. Garrett said, lifting the silver chalice. Inside was a mixture of their blood, Adrian's dark and strange, Eleanor's bright and vital, combined with the ritual components. "Share this cup, and share your fates." Adrian took the chalice first. He raised it to his lips and drank deeply. His face contorted with pain as the liquid burned down his throat. When he lowered the cup, his hands were shaking. He passed it to Eleanor. She didn't hesitate. She drank the remaining mixture and immediately understood Adrian's reaction. It was like swallowing molten metal and frozen fire simultaneously. Her body convulsed, but she forced herself to drain the cup completely. The moment the last drop passed her lips, the world exploded. Pain unlike anything Eleanor had ever experienced, and she'd died 5 times, tore through her body. Every nerve ending was on fire. Her bones felt like they were breaking and reforming. Her heart, which had been marked by Morgana's death spell, suddenly burned with agonizing intensity. Across from her, Adrian was experiencing his own torment. His vampire nature was being torn from him, leaving wounds that had existed for 3 centuries suddenly exposed. His immortality was raining away like water from a shattered vessel. They reached for each other instinctively, hands grasping across the small table. The moment their fingers touched, the pain intensified, but so did something else. Light, pure, brilliant light, erupted from their joined hands, flooding the room. It was so bright that James, Martha, and Miss Garrett had to shield their eyes. The symbols painted on the walls began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with Eleanor and Adrian's heartbeats. And somewhere miles away Morgana screamed. She felt it, the sire bond shattering like glass. The connection she'd maintained to Adrian for 3 centuries suddenly severed, leaving her gasping and weakened. And worse, she felt her death spell on Eleanor's heart break apart, dissolving into nothing. "No," Morgana whispered into the darkness of her hidden sanctuary. "No, this isn't possible," but it was happening. The light gradually faded. The pain receded. Eleanor and Adrian remained seated, still holding hands, both of them trembling and gasping for breath. But they were breathing, both of them. Their hearts were beating, both of them. Eleanor looked down at their joined hands and saw that something fundamental had changed. Adrian's skin, which had always been cool as marble, now held warmth, not burning heat like hers had been, but genuine human warmth. His chest rose and fell with real breath. needed breath, and her own body felt different, stronger, more aware. She could hear Adrian's heartbeat as clearly as her own, could smell the candle wax and old paper and autumn wind through the walls, could feel power humming beneath her skin, borrowed from darkness, but not consumed by it. "Did it work?" Eleanor whispered, almost afraid to hope. Adrian lifted his free hand to his chest, feeling his own heartbeat with wonder. "I'm mortal," he breathed. "After 300 years, I'm mortal, and I'm enhanced," Eleanor said, testing her new senses. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vivid. "I can feel everything." Mr. Garrett approached the circle cautiously, examining them both with knowing eyes. The ritual succeeded. The bonds are broken. Sire bond, curse death spell. All severed. "You're both free." "Free," Adrian repeated the word as if he'd forgotten its meaning. Then he laughed. A sound of pure, incredulous joy. "We're free. Eleanor, we're actually free." He pulled her up from her chair and into his arms, spinning her around despite his newly mortal strength. Eleanor laughed too, tears of relief streaming down her face. Lord James was weeping openly, and even stern Martha had tears in her eyes. Mr. Garrett simply smiled, a satisfied expression that spoke of decades of service finally rewarded with success. "What time is it?" Eleanor asked suddenly, a thought striking her. Mr. Garrett checked his pocket watch. 12:15. "Your birthday, Miss Eleanor. You're 25 years old." Silence fell as the significance sank in. Eleanor had reached her 25th birthday, the age at which every previous incarnation had died. But she was alive. The curse was truly, finally broken. 200 years, Adrian whispered, his forehead pressed against Eleanor's. 200 years of suffering, of loss, of watching you die. And it's over. It's finally over. Not over, Eleanor corrected gently. Beginning. This is where our life finally begins. They kissed. A kiss that held 2 centuries of longing, 6 lifetimes of love, and the promise of a future finally within reach. The celebration had been modest, but heartfelt. Lord James had broken out Adrian's finest wine, which Adrian could now actually taste for the first time in 300 years. Martha had prepared a birthday cake. They'd toasted to freedom, to love, to second chances. But as the adrenaline faded and exhaustion set in, reality began to intrude on the joy. Eleanor and Adrian stood together in his study, looking at a map of England spread across his desk. "She'll come for us," Eleanor said quietly. "Morgana, she won't accept this. She'll want revenge." "I know," Adrian replied. "We've taken everything from her. Her control over me, her curse, her victory. She'll be furious, dangerous. But you're mortal now," Eleanor pointed out, worry creeping into her voice. "You have enhanced abilities still, and so do I, but we're not immortal. We can be killed." "Then we don't give her the chance," Adrian said firmly. "We leave, tonight. Take your father and Martha somewhere Morgana can't find us. Start over in a new place with new names. Run for the rest of our lives." Eleanor shook her head. "That's not freedom. That's just a different kind of curse." "What choice do we have?" Adrian demanded. "I'm not risking you. Not now. Not after everything we've fought for." Eleanor was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said, "What if we didn't run? What if we ended this completely? You want to hunt Morgana?" Adrian looked at her incredulously. "Eleanor, she's 600 years old, even weakened by the broken sire bond. She's still more powerful than both of us combined. But she's emotional right now," Eleanor countered. "Angry, irrational. We could use that. Set a trap. End her before she can regroup and come after us more carefully." Adrian studied her face. This woman who died 5 times and learned something from each death. This woman who remembered 2 centuries of tragedy and refused to accept more. "You're serious?" "Completely," Eleanor confirmed. "I'm tired of being afraid, Adrian. I'm tired of running. I want to face her, defeat her, and then live the rest of our mortal lives knowing she can't hurt us anymore." "It's suicide," Adrian said flatly. "Or it's the only way we truly win," Eleanor replied. You choose a lifetime of looking over our shoulders, or one final confrontation that ends this forever. Adrian closed his eyes, the weight of 3 centuries of experience warring with 2 weeks of desperate hope. Finally he opened them and met Eleanor's gaze. One final confrontation, he agreed. But we plan it carefully. We use every advantage we have, and if it starts to go wrong, we run. Agreed, Eleanor said, and sealed it with a kiss. They found her in the ruins of an old monastery, 20 miles north of Blackthorn Manor. Miss Garrett had tracked her through old vampire networks, even broken. The sire bond left traces that a skilled investigator could follow. Morgana was waiting for them. She stood in what had once been the monastery's chapel, now open to the sky. Silver hair whipped around her in a wind that didn't touch anything else. Her silver eyes blazed with fury, and her beautiful face was twisted with rage. "You dare," she hissed, as Eleanor and Adrian entered. "You dare come here after what you've done." "What we've done," Eleanor replied calmly. "We broke a curse you had no right to cast. We freed ourselves from your obsession." "Obsession?" Morgana's laugh was jagged glass. "You think this was obsession? No, sweet child. This was justice. Adrian was mine. I made him. I shaped him. I gave him power. And he threw it away for mortal love, for weakness. He deserved to suffer for that betrayal. I deserved to make my own choice," Adrian countered, stepping forward. "You never owned me, Morgana. You never will. I owned you for 3 centuries, Morgana, and I would have owned you for 3 more if you hadn't performed that ritual. Do you know what you've cost me? The sire bond was my masterpiece, my link to power that spanned centuries, and you severed it. You made yourself mortal. Weak. Mortal isn't weak," Eleanor said. "Mortal means we have something to fight for, something to lose. That makes us stronger than you'll ever understand." Morgana's eyes fixed on Eleanor with predatory focus. "Brave words from someone who's died 5 times already. Shall we make it?" She moved, vampire speed, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. But Eleanor was ready. The ritual had enhanced her reflexes, and she'd been expecting the attack. She dodged, rolling aside, and coming up with a wooden stake she'd concealed in her coat. "You think that toy will stop me?" Morgana sneered. "No," Eleanor admitted, "but it'll slow you down." Adrian was moving too, circling around Morgana's other side. They'd planned this, 2 enhanced mortals working together against one vampire. Divide her attention, make her choose. Morgana laughed. "Oh, this is precious. You actually think you can fight me? I've survived vampire hunters, witch trials and wars that consumed nations. Your children playing at battle. Then why are you so angry?" Eleanor asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "If we're such children, why does our freedom enrage you so much?" Morgana's expression flickered. Just for a moment, something raw and human showed through the monster. "Because you won," she whispered. 200 years of planning, of careful torture, of watching you both suffer exactly as I designed. And you broke it. You found a way out that I never anticipated. You made me fail. So this was never really about Adrian rejecting you, Eleanor realized. It was about control, about proving you're smarter than everyone else. You can't stand losing. I don't lose. Morgana snarled, and attacked again. This time she went for Adrian, vampire claws extended, aiming for his throat. But Adrian had lived as a vampire for 3 centuries. He knew how they moved, how they thought. He ducked under the strike and drove his own stake toward her heart. Morgana twisted impossibly, avoiding the fatal blow, but taking a deep cut across her ribs. Black blood, old vampire blood, dripped onto the stone floor. "You're slower," Adrian observed. "The broken sire bond weakened you more than you're admitting." "I'm still stronger than you," Morgana hissed, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. Eleanor saw it, the opening in Morgana's confidence. She pressed it. "You're alone, Morgana. You've been alone for 600 years, because you can't stand anyone being equal to you. You can't love. You can't trust. You can't do anything except control and destroy. That's not strength. That's just sad." "Shut up," Morgana screamed, and the remaining stained glass in the monastery shattered from the force of her rage. You don't know anything about me. You're a mortal who's lived 25 years. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've been alone through all of it, Eleanor finished. While we've had each other, across lifetimes. That's why you really hate us, isn't it? Not because Adrian rejected you, but because he found something you never could love, that survives death itself. Morgana's face crumbled, and for just a moment, she looked ancient and tired. I loved once, she whispered. 600 years ago. He died. They always die. I learned that immortality means watching everything you care about turn to dust, so I stopped caring. I embraced what I'd become, and when Adrian refused to do the same, refused to accept that love is pointless for our kind, I wanted him to learn. I wanted him to suffer as I'd suffered. Then you've succeeded, Adrian said quietly. I've suffered for 2 centuries, Morgana. I've watched Eleanor die 5 times. I've felt my heart break over and over. I've experienced the exact pain you wanted me to feel. Good, Morgana said, but her voice lacked conviction. But I've also loved for 2 centuries, Adrian continued. I've known joy, hope, even through the suffering, even through the curse. I had something you haven't had in 600 years, a reason to keep living. So yes, you made me suffer, but you also made me cherish every moment with Eleanor, even more. You didn't win, Morgana. You just taught me how precious love is. Tears, actual tears, began to fall from Morgana's silver eyes. I hate you, she whispered. I hate that you still believe in love. I hate that you're happy. I hate that you're free. I know, Adrian said gently, but Morgana, you could have what we have. You could let go of the hatred. You could— No, Morgana cut him off. Her tears stopped as suddenly as they'd begun, replaced by cold resolution. If I can't have happiness, neither can you. If you're going to be mortal, fine. You'll die naturally in 40 or 50 years. But I'll make sure those years are filled with terror. I'll hunt you. I'll destroy everyone you love. I'll make every day of your mortal life a nightmare. She raised her hand, dark energy gathering around it, a spell that would kill them both instantly. Eleanor and Adrian moved together, their enhanced speed and perfect coordination allowing them to close the distance before Morgana could release the spell. Eleanor drove her stake toward Morgana's heart, while Adrian grabbed Morgana's wrist, forcing the death spell away from them. For a moment they all froze, a tableau of violence and desperation. Then Eleanor pushed the stake home. Morgana gasped, her silver eyes going wide. No, not like this. Not after everything. I'm sorry, Eleanor said, and meant it. I'm sorry you never found peace. I'm sorry hatred consumed you. I'm sorry we couldn't save you too. Morgana's body began to disintegrate, centuries of unnatural life finally catching up. She aged rapidly, becoming ancient, then skeletal, then ash. The ash scattered in a wind that came from nowhere, carrying away the last remains of a vampire who'd lived too long and loved too little. Silence fell over the ruined monastery. Eleanor and Adrian stood together, both trembling, both splattered with black vampire blood, both alive. It's over, Eleanor whispered. It's really truly over. Adrian pulled her close, and they stood there in the ruins for a long time, holding each other, feeling their mortal hearts beat in sync, finally free, finally together, finally able to live.